I think we're inviting God's judgment on our nation when we shake our fist at him and say, we know better than you as to what constitutes a marriage. And I pray God's mercy on our generation that has such a prideful, arrogant attitude to think that we would have the audacity to try to redefine what marriage is all about.
What a firestorm those remarks created. That, of course, was CEO Dan Cathy of restaurant chain Chick-fil-A, prompting a big backlash. We know about Boston, Chicago, cities suggesting they wouldn't let them open new restaurants here on the basis of this supposedly homophobic statement. Big defenders coming out on the other side, defending his right to free speech. Will the company, though, get through this? John Bussey's got a very interesting column out on this, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on it, John.
Yeah, it's interesting. He's very clear spoken. It's not a big surprise because he's known for being conservative. He's a very successful businessman in Georgia. His stores, 1,600 of them, are national and chiefly in the South. So he's a player. And these comments come at a very sensitive time because this is a topic that's also in the election cycle now. And what I kind of concluded was that in a certain respect, Mr. Cathy is speaking to his audience and his consumer base because sentiment in the South is still against gay marriage.
Right.
So it's the part of the United States that's most against gay marriage. And so his comments probably resonated. Longer term, though, it's a little bit trickier, right? He wants to expand into the North. He wants to expand, nationally. And there he's going to bump up against sentiment that's really running counter.
Let's just look at the footprint of the store, which speaks to what you're talking about here. I think we've got some numbers about where they are dominant. Look at that: Texas, Georgia, Florida, North Carolina, all classic southern, predominantly conservative states. That seems to be the largest presence they have. As you say, speaking to that audience, and actually, probably perhaps picking up a bit of a bump amongst them, right? There's been some rallying of the troops, if you like.
That's exactly right. There was, some counter protests to show support for the restaurant. So they had huge sales yesterday. This is when this took place. There were long lines of people kind of crowding into the stores. Mind you, he's president of this company. It's a family-owned company. He does not see these remarks as anti-gay, right? He says that it's in Scripture that it's ordained that this marriage should be between a man and a woman.
Right.
So that again, it resonates with a lot of people in the United States and a lot of people in the South.
It does. What's interesting, the fact that it's a family company, of course, is important. That removes the pressure that might come from shareholders. He has a little bit more leeway, one would think, to speak his mind.
Yeah, I think that's right.
But on the broader scale, and you talk about this in your column, going forward, and what's interesting, when President Obama came out and supported gay marriage, it seemed to me to be a very calculated event. He had his finger in the wind, and he recognised that support was shifting in favour of gay marriage across the country. Now, going forward then, and looking to the broader national marketplace, where does Chick-fil-A fit into a country whose demographics are shifting, whose social mores are changing? And of course, branding is critical in this, right? Where does the Chick-fil-A brand lie in a future United States?
Yeah, that's right. And these are very important points because I think that President Obama put his finger to the wind, and a lot of companies are putting their finger to the wind.
Right.
And what they're seeing is what the polls are showing. 65% of people against gay marriage in 1996. That's down to around 44-45% nationally now. So there's a slow but sure sea change going on. It's far from being resolved. It is against this sea change that Chick-fil-A is now going to attempt to expand its business into the North. And there will be a lot of marketers who say, look, this is chicken sandwiches we're talking about. The average person is going to say, okay, all right, I know there's a kind of a hubbub. I just want a quick lunch.
Give me a quick hit of fat.
So they're not going to. So they're not going to. And there's a lot of customer satisfaction built around these restaurants. They're popular. So they're not going to really care about these issues. That may be the case in certain parts of the country. In other parts of the country, particularly in this day and age of Twitter and Facebook, which has been the dominant form of how this controversy got going and got sustained. That's going to be a perpetual source of scrutiny of the restaurants.
I wonder, though, if there are some on the sort of more liberal side who might actually be coming to their defence, because it seems one of the great issues that's arisen here is freedom of speech. Not just because he came out and can say what he says, but he actually provoked a backlash from political leaders of government in Boston, in Chicago, that looked as if they were going to use their power to respond in response
Yeah.
to what should be considered something of a free speech
Yeah,
issue.
that's
I wonder
right.
whether ACLU type people
Well,
who
they
might,
have. They have indeed, and it's politics makes strange bedfellows.
Absolutely.
The ACLU says, look, he's got a right, just like anybody else, to say what's on his mind. An alderman in Chicago does not have a right to take the law and prescribe that this person won't be allowed to build a restaurant in a certain zone. And so you've heard the politicians in the last few days kind of dialing back their rhetoric, saying, well, look, we're going to allow them in if they just have to meet all of the zoning requirements and everything else. But that's only after there was this public reaction that says you can't take the law into your own hands.